Welcome to Running the Table, the podcast where we run through everything on the table in the world of college basketball. Purdue sadly found themselves on the wrong side of a close overtime battle with Wisconsin in the semifinal round of the Big Ten tournament earlier today in Minneapolis. And there's a whole lot to talk about it. But without further ado, let's run it. So this one ended in a score of Wisconsin 76, Purdue 75 in overtime. A tough way for Purdue to end their Big Ten tournament title defense. This game was another battle start to finish, from chippy technicals to a whole lot of free throws. This game had a lot of layers that changed the tone from the initial tip. There's a lot that both teams can take away from this game, but specifically Purdue has a lot to take a look at for why this game went the way that it did. But I personally think there are some silver linings to it despite the loss. As per usual, Purdue started this game going right to Zach Edey, getting an and-one putback to open this game, and Purdue jumped out to a quick 6-2 lead. But 2 minutes in, Purdue's game plan would get flipped on its head. Zach Edey gets his first foul on a push-off going for an offensive rebound, and after the whistle, he has some words with Steven Crowell. Max Klesmit bumps into Edey, getting in his way on Edey's way down the floor, and Edey and Crowell shared some more words while getting separated. But if you watched it, there really wasn't that much to look at. But it was enough to get the refs to issue a double technical on Edey and Crowell. So with 17:57 left in the first half, just a little over 2 minutes in, Zach Edey has to leave the game with 2 instant fouls, drastically changing how Purdue runs their offense, as well as removing their leading shot blocker and major presence in the lane on defense. Purdue spent the rest of their first half trying to figure out what was working and what wasn't on the offensive end, and ended up being down as much as 5 before Zach Edey came back into the game with about 7 minutes to play in the half. They were able to fight their way back with some made free throws down the stretch to claw back to an even 34-34 at the break. This includes Purdue shooting just 1 for 8 from 3 in the first half, while Wisconsin shot 5 for 17 from 3. Based on what I saw, not having Edey for about half of the first half, I viewed going into halftime tied as a win in my book. It honestly was quite similar to how the first half of the Michigan State game went. But the second half would be a much different story, even though the Boilermakers wouldn't deal with as much foul trouble. The three started falling a bit more as they went 4 for 8 from deep in the second half, but turnovers became a massive issue. The turnover margin in the second half was 11-1. Purdue got super sloppy. Passes, push-offs, nonchalant dribbling, you name it. It was really tough to watch for a stretch there. Yet, still, Purdue hit shots, free throws, and made stops enough to keep themselves in the game. As the time winded down, Purdue had the lead and the ball on the baseline with under 30 seconds to go. One beautifully designed inbound play later, Zach Edey gets hit on the elbow on his pass to Braden Smith. No foul gets called, and the ball ends up behind Braden. Turnover number 11 of the half, and Wisconsin gets another chance. They get a Chucky Hepburn bucket. Purdue successfully inbounds the ball to Edey up 1. He gets fouled instantly, but only makes 1 of 2 free throws. The door is now open for Wisconsin to no longer need a 3 to tie, just a 2. And with a couple seconds left, after taking a timeout to discuss their play, Chucky Hepburn was able to beat Braden Smith on a straight line drive to put up a layup to send the game to overtime. Overtime ends up being back and forth with a couple of buckets either way, but I have to say, I was not impressed with Lance Jones' defensive effort in the end of the second half and in overtime. For as good of an on-ball defender as he is, he gave up a super easy straight-line drive with Purdue up 3 for a wide-open layup and just chose not to box out A.J. Storr on a Carter Gilmore 3 and gave up an easy putback dunk. Purdue was still in possession to win this game regardless after an Edey rebound and 2 free throws put them up 3 with 45 seconds left to go. They gave up another layup to Chucky Hepburn, but is because they chose to play it safe and make sure that they didn't foul to give him an and 1. And here comes Braden Smith up the floor, getting harassed by Hepburn, and he let the adrenaline and emotions get the best of him. He pushes off, gets an offensive foul, and Wisconsin gets their one last shot, down 1. Max Klesmit refused to be denied, putting up a little floater that bounced around and fell with 6 seconds to go. And Lance Jones brought the ball up the floor a little nonchalantly for Purdue being down with just, seconds to go, and ended up airballing the potential game winner. So it was a tough way to lose that game, like I said, but Purdue has a lot to learn from this game. Going into some of the top performers, despite being in foul trouble and obviously not he got disrupted off his game. He didn't look his best out there at times. Zach Edey still massively leads the Boilers with 28 points on 29 minutes. He did this in on 7 of 11 shooting. So he didn't end up having to shoot that much. And a big part of it was how much he got fouled. He ended up going 14 for 19 from the free throw line. But again, those 5 free throws did end up being key, clearly, with 11 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3 blocks, but also had 4 turnovers, one of them being the very key one that we mentioned earlier. Braden Smith as well. He had a solid game, not very good on the offensive side, though. He ended up with 7 points on 3 of 10 shooting, 1 for 3 from 3. He had 3 rebounds, but again, he was a fantastic playmaker in this one with 10 assists, as well as he had 2 turnovers, including that key push-off at the very end there. And he did also end up fouling out with that push-off, so he did get his 5 fouls, but with that last play there, I mean, they had their one more play. I don't know if Braden Smith really would have made that much of a difference on that last defensive play. For Wisconsin, Chucky Hepburn decided to remember how to play basketball at about the worst time possible for Purdue. He had a fantastic game, scoring 22 points on 9 of 12 shooting, 1 for 2 from 3, 2 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals, including, obviously that harassment of Braden Smith on that final play to cause that offensive foul, as well as AJ Storr. He ended up with 20 of his own. Wasn't a great 20 as he went 8 for 23. So he was shooting all over the floor. He airballed a couple ones, but he still overall made quite a few tough buckets. Ended up going 3 for 10 from 3. So he was really chucking them. 1 for 2 from the free throw line, 6 rebounds, and 1 steal. As for honorable mentions, Mason Gillis off the bench. Again, another key performance. He did only have 8 points on 3 of 7 shooting, but 2 for 5 from 3 when the Boilers obviously struggled from 3 for the most part in this one. 2 for 2 from the free throw line, 9 rebounds, which was fantastic for them, but he did end up with 3 turnovers. He was one of the key guys that ended up with some nonchalant passes there for some turnovers in that second half. I think he got 2 of them in the middle of that second half there. For Wisconsin, Max Klesmit, of course, has to be mentioned with that game winner. Ends up with 12 points on 5 of 9 shooting, 2 for 5 from 3, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 steals. So he had a great overall game, all-around game for him. Some key team points for Purdue, it has to be stupid turnovers. The push-off at the end, the walking through the motions and diagramming passes straight to the defense. There were countless turnovers in this game that were very avoidable, and it felt like they were borderline effort and focus-based. Like, guys just weren't paying enough attention. 16 turnovers is way too much, and to have such a massive imbalance in turnover margin in the second half was quite literally the biggest reason why they did not win this game, because they almost still did with that many. I understand Wisconsin picked up the pressure later on in the second half, but you have to elevate your game to respond to that, not crumble under the pressure. That's what old Purdue did. You can't go back to that now. And for the love of all things holy, box out. Similarly to last game, the Boilers yet again gave up double-digit offensive rebounds. For a team that rebounds as well as Purdue does, there should be no reason that an opposing team should get double-digit offensive rebounds and tie them for offensive rebounds as a team. They both ended up with 11 in this one. I talked about Lance Jones' example earlier, but he wasn't the only one that just chose not to box out and either go for the rebound without doing anything else or just assume that Zach Edey was going to go get it. It was just another culmination of how it felt like Purdue got lazy too much of this game. The combination of the turnovers and the second chances led Wisconsin to have 23 more shots than Purdue, and they ended up making 8 more. Purdue's ability to get to the free throw line and make 75% of them, going 24 for 32, was really the only thing that kept them in it. For Wisconsin, some things were early fouls disrupting your stars. Despite Chucky Hepburn finally stepping up in a big way, a guy like Tyler Wall was left borderline blanked, and Steven Crowell was taken out of his groove with foul trouble as well. Wall ended up with just 4 points and Crowell with 11 before they both fouled out later on in the game. Wall, similarly to Edey, got 2 quick ones that had to sit for a lot of the first half, and Crowell just got slowly chipped down with fouls as the game went on when he had to guard Edey for a decent amount of this game. Hell, he certainly isn't a star, but Noah Winter came in, played just 8 minutes, and didn't record a single stat except for 5 fouls and then went straight back to the bench. Fouls were certainly a big disruptor for the Badgers in this game and how they wanted to play. But for them, really a big key point was the disruptive defense. Midway through the second half, Wisconsin hit their second wind and sensed blood in the water as Purdue's focus faltered. They picked up the pressure while Purdue was at their lowest energy and ended up causing 5 turnovers in 6 possessions for the Boilermakers from the 11-minute mark to the 8-minute mark. It may not have made a huge difference in the score because they were unable to get almost any offense going during that stretch, but it kept them right there when Purdue really could have opened up a lead without all of those turnovers. Causing 11 turnovers in a half is impressive, even though I fully believe that Purdue really did, cause many of those and do them to themselves. But looking at this game as a whole, I come back to what Drew said in our Big Ten breakdown video. Who's going to stop them? And the answer is themselves. They beat themselves in this game, left and right, mistakes that they simply know better than to do and very typically are better. But they let the situation get the best of them, and I think that they can learn a lot going into whatever their first round matchup is on Thursday or Friday. So Purdue now loses their first overall seed and choice of region, even with Houston losing to Iowa State. Good pick, Drew. As UConn handled Marquette with ease in the Big East tournament final. It likely shouldn't matter with tournament region, as UConn will they will pick the East region to play in Boston, and Houston likely going to the South region. But no matter where they play and who they play, they've got to regroup and come back with a new fire, because it really is now or never. Wisconsin is back to playing good basketball again at the right time, and they'll play in the Big Ten Tournament Championship tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. Eastern against Illinois to try to take home the trophy for the first time since 2015 with Frank Kaminsky in that special group, and try to improve their seeding heading into the selection show tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. But that's all I've got for today. It is officially time. Selection Sunday is tomorrow, today by the time this video comes out, and with the madness that will be underway before we know it. With a ton of content here for you to catch up on as you go to make your brackets. We've got both Butler and Purdue game recaps, Boom Buster Believable, and all of our conference recaps. So stay tuned for our breakdown of the bracket once it comes out, and keep an eye out for the return of the Running the Table Bracket Challenge. As always, we sleep in May, but until then, like and subscribe for more college basketball content. And until next time, I'm out.